All right, so I think we should get started here. We've got about
Yeah.
30 people on the call. So thanks everyone for joining. Um, so I'll start with just telling everyone a little bit about myself, and then Richard will do the same. So um, my name is Nick Roman. I'm on the buyer demands team, and really what that means is for anyone who registers on Roofstock, since we are a relatively new company, we want to make sure everyone has a very good understanding of what we do, how we help investors reach their investing goals. So I hop on a phone call with them, go over what their experience is of investing is, if they have any, what they're looking to accomplish, both on a short-term and long-term schedule, and then we jump in and take a look at inventory. Right, we want to make sure that we're able to match them up with a property that's going to be the best for them. Everyone will have my contact info after the call here if anyone ever wants to schedule one of those calls. And then ultimately, I also help them build a longer term portfolio if they are looking to really start increasing that cash flow. So that's what I do. I've been with the company just about since we started in early 2016. So it's been really amazing watching the growth, and love working for.
Awesome. Thanks, Nick. Yeah. So I work pretty much on the other side of the transaction from Nick and his team, running the what we call the retail supply part of the organization. So part of our job is to work with sellers that come to our site interested in getting their homes listed. So these are makeup of individual homeowners that are looking to divest of their properties, property managers who might be looking to sell for some of their clients, brokers, turnkey operators in these local markets. Really anyone in that kind of small market to mid-market space that's looking to sell, whether on an individual level or from in a portfolio, and we'll kind of dive into both of those as well here. But I've been here with the company since early 2017, and so like Nick mentioned, really cool to see the growth of the marketplace. And so our real goal at the end of the day, as we take our sales calls, is to work with sellers to understand how to utilize the marketplace, how to understand the process of how to get a home up onto the site, explain to them kind of what buyers are looking for, make sure that we're able to curate the marketplace and work with the right partners to get the right kind of homes in front of you guys, so that as you look to work with folks like Nick to build your portfolios and expand your footprint throughout the country in the SFR space, you guys have access to all the right homes in the right markets. So we'll jump in here and kind of go through an agenda. I'll let Nick kind of run through what we're going to be going over today. But again, appreciate everybody joining and looking forward to diving in with you guys.
Thanks, Richard. Can you see my screen okay with just the big Roofstock logo there?
Yep.
Okay, great. So we already kind of went through about what Roofstock does. Really, our intention is to help anyone invest in real estate who wants to, regardless of where they live. So we're really streamlining the whole process of identifying a market, narrowing it down to a property, and then making your offer right on the site. And then, like Richard just went over, we also work with sellers to make sure that they have a really easy outlet to sell their property. Really, the goal is to make real estate investing stock market simple, is really the founders' goals of creating Roofstock. Just a quick snapshot of our company. We've done very well in this space. We have surpassed over $2 billion in transactional volume. That happened, I believe, about a year ago, which was a really great milestone. We have been able to track how our investors are performing in real life, so far with very strong results. A lot of that is attributed to the underwriting, which is going to include several things that might not show up on other platforms, such as repairs and maintenance, a vacancy factor. So we can always get into that on more of a one-on-one call if that's ever something you wanted to go through. What the idea is all you need is a computer, right? What you're able to do is search for properties online, analyze them, and then make your offer right on the site. We do then have a full-service transaction team that's going to walk the buyer through the entire closing process. So really, this is Roofstock's main value add is our certification process. Richard, did you want to touch on what a seller has to go through in order for their home to be listed on the site?
Yeah, sure. I don't know if it's maybe just me. I'm still on the Roofstock blue screen. I don't know if you've changed slides, but yeah, I'm happy to kind of elaborate. So as I mentioned, and kind of what our team does, right? We work with sellers to understand what it takes to get a home up onto the site. Roofstock's marketplace is really built around transparency and making sure that you as investors have, the information and the tools available to make a comfortable decision. Investing some of these homes that are, thousands of miles away throughout the country. And so part of what we do is really kind of breaking our diligence down. And the way I like to kind of think about it is moving part of that diligence that is historically held for an escrow period up to the front of the transaction. And so what that means is that going through certification means vetting out tenant documents, collecting leases, payment history from a property manager or a seller to understand the terms of that lease, the contract that you guys are going to be inheriting, and making sure that we look at the payment history and understand that that correlates with that lease. So when is rent due? When is it late? What does the late fees look like? Who is responsible for appliances? Who's responsible for utilities? That type of thing. We also collect Section 8 contracts. We collect the homeowners association documents. And then a really big portion of the certification process is that inspection, right? We want to get out there to the home using some of our third-party vendors, run through the property and make sure that we have a good understanding of the condition of the property. If there's any long-term or short-term repairs that might be needed, looking at the major systems, getting interior, exterior, and really vetting the home out so that we all have a good understanding of the condition of the home. Finally, it's the title search, making sure that we've cleared title with some of our other third-party title vendors, that there are no liens, encumbrances, any legal issues that may pose a problem as we look to close or as you post closing for anyone. So the idea being that as we're able to vet all of this out on the front end, we have a really good understanding of the value in that asset, the diligence within that asset, and that we know the kind of product that we're putting out in the marketplace. So that in and of itself is really the gist of our certification process. And again, it's really built around making sure we have a transparent marketplace, and in conjunction with that underwriting, right, that we feel comfortable in the product that we're putting up, and that you guys know as well.
Anyway, thanks for going through that. One other thing I wanted to note on this certification is, since there is an inspection up front, you are able to view that inspection, of course, and then base your offer accordingly. If you see that a home needs about $1,000 in repairs, go ahead and make your offer below asking price in anticipation of your property manager taking care of those repairs for you. What happens a lot of the time, and Richard, you can attribute to this, is since that inspection takes place up front, we do go back to the seller with it before they list it. So a lot of the times what you'll notice is some sort of an invoice uploaded into the diligence section, showing you that the seller did repair some, if not all, of the items that came up in that initial inspection report. Great. So as far as types of homes that you'll find on the site, and I'm going to take a quick step back and just let everyone know that what we'll do after this is pull up the site together, and then for about the second half of the entire call, we're going to make sure to field any questions that anyone has. So get ready to come up with some questions just to let everyone know. As far as the types of homes on the site, really we've bucketed them into 3 different categories: supplemental income, balanced investing, and long-term growth. So really the goal here is that we're trying to identify what an investor is looking for. A lot of that is going to have to do with the amount of capital that they have, but more importantly, we're really looking for what their long-term goal is. With a supplemental income property, generally what we find is a lower priced home that has a higher cap rate. You will have a lower investment price, especially if you're financing. You can put anywhere from 20 to 30% down. Very doable for buying a property, and it will have a higher cash-on-cash return. There are some challenges that do come along with these types of homes. Generally, they're going to be in lower rated neighborhoods. They might have higher operation costs, whether it's an older home, just needs some more work up front. Their rent will not increase as much as a home that's in an appreciating area, and just a bit more management intensive. So potentially a few more phone calls with the property manager. Just want to be aware of those potential pitfalls of the property. As you move up in price, you're of course getting a home in a better area, more likely a 3-bed, 2-bath, maybe with a garage. This is really going to be for an investor who wants something in the middle, right? They want appreciation, but they also want the cash flow. These properties do tend to sell pretty quickly on the site for that reason. So they are generally a little bit harder to find, and at times they are also older homes. Now, when we're looking at a longer term hold, this is going to be for an investor who is not as concerned necessarily with the immediate cash flow. They're more looking at things like where the home is, the curb appeal, the neighborhood it's in, the school district. They're really looking for that long-term growth. They're not as concerned with seeing a higher cash flow. So obviously this is going to be a higher priced home, so more capital up front. Cash flow will be limited. Turn costs, that would just be attributed to it being a larger home, so just more appliances, more hardwood floors to take care of, things like that. So hopefully that makes sense to everyone. What I would want to do now is pull up the site. And what we're going to do is essentially just set a filter. And this is really a very powerful tool on Roofstock. And Richard, can you still hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. So this is just roofstock.com. And we're adding properties every day. Really, the best thing to do is whatever you're looking for, you're going to want to set a filter. So if we started and we were going to look for one of those lower priced homes with a higher cash flow, an example would be, let's set something so that we're buying a house under 100K with at least a 7% cap rate. This will tell you that there is a very strong cash flow. Again, if any of these terms bring up questions, either on the second half of the call, make sure to ask, or if we schedule a one-on-one down the road, always happy to go over these terms. But a cap rate is generally going to be what to expect on your investment in year one. It's your net operating income divided by the purchase price. So a 7% or higher is considered a very strong cap rate. We're going to make sure that the home is occupied. And if you're financing, which most of our investors do, we're going to exclude a cash only deal. That way you know you can finance the home. So you'll click apply.
Just to bring up, right, as you guys might have seen, Nick went through and maybe selected about 3 filters, but as you can kind of see through those tools, I mean, you can get super general if you want to filter by simply a geography. You can get very granular filtering by bed bath counts and square footages and year build. So, this tool here and this filtering is, I think, probably one of the more powerful ways that, you guys as investors are able to gain exposure to all the different markets that we have within our marketplace without having to scroll, and look at one home at a time. You can really fine tune these filters and save them to make sure that you're getting exposure to the right kind of homes that are within your guys' wheelhouse and in your buy box. So just wanted to touch on that quickly.
Perfect. Yeah, totally agree. So that's narrowing down. I mean, we have close to 400 properties on the site right now. We'll be adding a lot in this upcoming week. So it's definitely good to narrow down as closely as you can to what's going to be the best fit. Once you do create a filter, you are able to save it, meaning that anytime we do list a property that matches that criteria, you'll just get a quick email notification. So that's a really useful tool as well. So let's just click on this first one. And we can kind of just go off of this, and I'll show you basically what I do anytime we list a property. First, I'm going to look at the asking price. So the seller on this one is asking $99,500. Everything on our site is negotiable. So you can always offer below asking price, at asking price, or when it's in the open house period, which means it was just listed on the site, you are also able to offer above asking price to really make your offer competitive. If you're financing, the first thing you'll want to do is move your down payment bar. Let's say you're putting 25% down. You'll notice that all your numbers will adjust accordingly. Cash flow year one, that's based on all expenses, things like property management fees, taxes, insurance, repairs and maintenance, everything there. Under the summary tab is going to tell you a bit more about the current lease as well as the area it's in. You'll notice this property does have a tenant in place. They signed a lease in December of last year. They have a lease that runs through November of this year. And you'll notice that the seller will replace the furnace upon sale of the property. So anything of note, and Richard, you can speak to this, if the seller has offered to do something, we'll put that right there in the bullet points.
Yeah, so we'll use this kind of marketing details section for a couple of different things, right? We'll use it to highlight, maybe the geographical location of that property relative to some landmarks, airports, employment centers, maybe some of the major employers within the area. If a seller has made any recent repairs to part of the property, has replaced the roof, has replaced a major system, has put a rehab into a home, or injected a sizable amount of capital into the property, we'll confirm that those repairs, as well as added marketing details here. And this will also be reflected on the inspection report that we'll get to and show you as well. But if there's anything that comes up that maybe comes off as a credit or a contingency of closing. A seller willing to credit for a repair or make the repair as a contingency. You'll find those here as well. So as you look at the inspection report, also make sure to look at this section to make sure if there's any correlating data points or marketing details.
Perfect. Also, under the summary tab, you will notice that you can click into the map if you wanted to go down and look at Google Street View. I always take advantage of when we list properties, taking a look at the neighboring properties. Just kind of getting a sense of the area, since you will not be traveling out to that property, at least before you make your offer. This neighborhood rating is on a 1 through 5 scale. This is a Roofstock proprietary rating. If we click into it, it'll show you the factors that go into creating the score. So it's really taking an approach of wanting to make sure that the investor is aware of the socioeconomics in that area.
And this is being pulled from census data collected from the state.
Right. School district. So this is going to be elementary, middle, and high school based on a 1 through 10 scale. Richard, that comes from greatschools.org. Is that right?
Yep.
Perfect. You'll notice there's no HOA required on this one. Obviously, if there was, it would tell you what the amount was, and no additional flood insurance required either. The financials tab. So this comes from our underwriting team. We won't dive in too deep here, but this is where you're going to get a snapshot of what your returns will be. Whether you're looking for some sort of a cap rate or some sort of a cash on cash goal, you are able to view that here. One very useful tool is if you click right here where it says cash flow, this is your year one pro forma. So earlier I mentioned that Roofstock's very conservative in our underwriting. This is where you'll see all the expenses in year one. We do include things like a vacancy factor, repairs and maintenance, as well as capital expenditures. After all of these expenses, we expect the investor to net about $3,000 in just the first year.
Well, and I want to just kind of point out, our organization, as Nick kind of mentioned earlier in the call, it's a very deep rooted, experience in the single family sector. So, the data and the perspective that goes into this underwriting comes from, decades and decades and $1 billion worth of homes bought and sold. And so, this is an underwriting mentality and a perspective that comes pretty much straight out of the institutional world, that is held by and used by more or less most of the larger institutions in the country.
Mm-hmm.
That being said, it's all malleable. You are able to customize any of those financials. So if you feel the need to budget higher or lesser for any of these line items, increase or decrease your property management fees, you can do so and watch as your cash flow and your cash on cash and cap rates change, which is super powerful given that, we have a set standard that we kind of live by as we list and go to market. But we understand that every investor's perspective and every investor's experience is different. And so we allow you as investors and users to manipulate these financials to fit your particular situation, whether it's operating expenses, the debt service that you guys are going to be getting. But it's all malleable to your own unique experience. So I wanted to point that out.
Yeah, great point. And a quick shortcut, like Richard mentioned, is since you are able to play around with the numbers and do some of your own underwriting, if you just click right here where it says custom, that'll pull up an editable pro forma where you can adjust some of the numbers. So let's say you wanted to lower the repairs because the seller will take care of really the major expense of replacing the furnace, and then click apply. You'll notice your cash flow will adjust accordingly. So moving on to the analysis tab, this is really where most of the documents are going to be that we take care of up front, including a valuation report, an inspection, a title report, and a tenant ledger to show you that the tenants have been current on rent. When you're looking at comps in the area, we come up with a range, and what that means is we looked at similar homes in the area based on square footage, bed bath count, and age of the home. The lowest price home in the area sold for $89,900, the highest for $105,000. The seller is asking for $99,500. So usually they do like to see an offer within that range, but it's really up to the investor where they offer. When you're pulling up an inspection, it's important to be comfortable with the current condition of the home. So what you're going to see is a breakdown of the estimated repairs, totaling about $3,000. And then if you wanted to learn further about what those repairs will entail, you'll just scroll down. And then starting on about page 10 of the report, you're going to get several additional photos of the home as well if you wanted to look through the exterior photos as well as the interior photos. And Richard, what would be like an example of a home, being disqualified from the site? So like it wouldn't pass the certification. Is there anything in particular that our inspectors are looking for or the third-party inspection companies are looking for?
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, we want to go and this would be considered a 10-point inspection. And we're going to go through the full interior and the exterior of the home. When we consider something disqualified, right now that means, more of a health and safety concern. That's surrounded by, mold-like substances within the property, whether it's within the house, in a basement or an attic, faulty electrical, major foundational concerns, basically anything that would potentially put a tenant at risk. That's obviously not something that we want, new investors walking into or being exposed to. And so the idea here is that, the goal of the inspection report is to be transparent and, be as objective as possible with the condition of the home. But at the end of the day, there is a standard as to which, we are comfortable putting on the site. And then when things become a health and safety concern to a potential tenant, that's where we would draw the line and go back to the seller and say, hey, this is ultimately not something until repaired that we would feel comfortable putting on the site. While this particular home doesn't necessarily have any of those concerns, I think if you click on the inspection report 3 tab, you'll see that what's happened in this case is the seller went back and per some of the repairs, while not health and safety concerns, some of the more cosmetic or functional concerns of the home that came up on the original inspection report, the seller took it upon themselves to go out and get a licensed contractor to go and make these repairs, right? So what we've seen here is that while the initial inspection done in early April may have shown, a certain list of needed repairs, that list has now been lessened and reduced based off of the work that the seller has gone, post inspection to go and repair. So you'll see the timestamp here is May 11th, 2020 for this date of receipts, whereas the initial inspection was from early April. So these repairs have been done post inspection, which helps you understand that the seller has made it a point to go ahead and take the necessary actions to get this home to be as nice as it can be.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, that can be really helpful to the prospective investor, right? Now they know that the home has had some work. They're able to view the actual invoice and make sure that it's been taken care of. Great. And then we won't dive into each of these, but we do run title, as Richard mentioned earlier. We do verify the tenants are current on rents. And another document we do add is the PSA. That's the purchase and sale agreement. So we use a uniform PSA across all markets. If you wanted to look through this beforehand, obviously more than welcome to look through the what would be sent to you on DocuSign if an offer was accepted on the site. One piece we have not touched on yet is property management. It's a really big part of investing remotely. Obviously, you're not going to be the ones who are going out to fix plumbing or fix lights or roofing or anything like that. Your property manager is going to handle all of that for you. So the way it works with Roofstock is anytime we enter a new market, we actually will fly a team out and really interview as many different companies in that area as we can. And based on the interviews, we're going to go through things like how long they've been in business, what their fees look like, make sure they have a very easy to use online portal, make sure that they're able to do direct deposits for rents, which most people would prefer. And then we choose usually 2 or 3 per market. So if you look right here, you'll see that there are 2 options for you to choose from. We do list their fee structure and contact info. So while you don't have to choose up front which company you would want to work with, a lot of our investors take advantage of reaching out to them beforehand, asking them any questions about the area, basically run your own little interview before you choose. Also under the buy process tab, our engineers are currently working on revamping this section of the site. There are a few lenders that we work with other than these 2. The investor is able to come with their own financing if they like, or we can always make an introduction to lenders that we've worked with in the past. So we've hit about the halfway mark here. I think what we can do next is I'll briefly talk about what it looks like to make an offer and to close on a property, and then we can jump right into any questions. So as I mentioned earlier, you are able to offer on these homes. Really all you would do is just type in your offer price and click review bid. It'll walk you through everything you need to know about the offer. One thing that I also have not touched on yet is the Roofstock marketplace fee. The marketplace fee is the only time that an investor ever has to pay Roofstock. if you buy a property on our site with a sale price under 100,000, it'll be a flat fee of $500, just which goes to your credit card. If it's a property over 100,000, it's going to be a half a percentage point. So if you found a property you liked, maybe more in that balanced category, let's say it's 150, that would be a $750 charge. Just keep in mind that it's free to place the offer. So if you went in here and you offered 90,000 on this home and the seller declined, that fee is not charged. It's only if the offer is accepted. If it is accepted, that fee would be applied to your card. And then our team would reach out on the transaction side, and they're going to have a transaction coordinator assigned to you. What they're going to help with is closing on the property. Um, Typically on a financed transaction, we do aim for a 30-day close. If it's a cash offer, it's going to be a lot quicker, closer to about 15 days. So we are able to close remotely in those deadlines. So once that happens and you close on the property, you would also continue to be able to lean on us as a resource, whether it's for looking for additional properties. If anyone ever has an issue with the property management company that we linked them up with, we do have a support team that's always happy to step in. So we're really here every step of the way for you, even after you close on the property. And then with my team, what we do is if someone is looking to add to that portfolio, we can help them identify certain markets, certain properties that might be a good fit for them. So that's really in a nutshell what Roofstock does. Richard, did you have anything else you wanted to go over before we start trying to field some questions here?
No, I mean, I think you pretty much covered it. Happy. I think we have about 7 or 8 questions here, so happy to kind of go down the list if you wanted to start. Do you have those up in front of you? So I think you had touched on some of these already, but we'll kind of go down the list. So the first question was, if an existing lease ends in an eviction, does Roofstock help with that process, or is that more the owner or property manager? So if ultimately, if you end up purchasing a home with a tenant in place, that tenant ends up going under eviction, that responsibility would land with the new owner, yourself, and the property manager. Ultimately, we wouldn't list a home with a tenant that's currently going through eviction. And part of our agreement and work with the seller is that as material changes occur to the lease, whether the home is on market or it's in contract, we would make sure to obtain that updated information and relay it to any prospective buyers who are offering. Make sure it's updated on the site, as well as update any buyers that may be in contract, so they can make that ultimate decision. If this is months, years down the line, ultimately that would end up being responsibility of the new owner and the property manager.
Right, exactly. And then also going back to that tenant ledger, we do have a certification step there. So if someone is well behind on rent, we're not going to list the property until they are current on rent. So we do take a look at that up front to make sure it's not, a risky tenant where that might happen. Generally, evictions are very rare, but obviously they do happen in real estate. If it does, then your property manager can help you deal with that. Great. So hopefully that answered that question. The next one I see here is how do the fees actually work and the realtor fees. So we briefly touched on that. So the only time that an investor ever has to pay Roofstock is that marketplace fee. Roofstock doesn't make a whole lot off of that $500, obviously. So where the majority of our fee goes to is the seller. These are actually all exclusive to Roofstock. So they're not being sold on the open market. We're charging the sellers we work with 3%. And Richard, maybe you can talk more about what they would normally see if they were to go to a realtor and say do it the traditional way. What type of fees they would see there?
Yeah, so I mean, it certainly changes market by market what those closing costs are. With our transactions, we have a 50-50 split between buyer and seller for any sort of closing costs with title. Those that as Nick mentioned, that's a universal PSA that we have. So individual markets have individual guidelines and kind of fee breakdowns. If you were to go and look at a home in Memphis through a traditional sale versus a home in Tampa or Dallas, those are going to change slightly. Through Roofstock, your closing costs are 50-50. But ultimately, in a traditional sale, there's sellers typically cover the buy side agent's fee for any sort of acquisition on a traditional channel. Cool.
Yeah. So in the end, Roofstock is we're making about 3.5% on each transaction is the short answer to that question. And then the next question was, and I'm seeing a lot come in here, so we'll try to get through all of them, as fast as we can here. But if we don't end up getting to everyone's questions, like I said earlier, we'll definitely have our contact info out there after the call. So I'm seeing, is there a scenario where a transaction does not occur after bidding? For example, no agreement on price. Is there a cancellation fee with Roofstock, or is there a way to hit pause until a later date? So once you make your offer, you do put it in your credit card just in case if an offer is accepted, that marketplace fee would be applied. The actual purchase and sale agreement would not be sent to you for about 24 to 48 hours after the offer was accepted. Now, if a buyer say they wanted to pull out in those first 2 days, you would lose the marketplace fee. That's really one of the main reasons that we have that marketplace fee in the first place. Once you sign the purchase agreement, you are in contract. Once the purchase agreement is signed, about 3 days later is when the earnest money is sent in, which is $1,500 per property. So that's really when you're fully in contract and there's been money transferred. That goes to a third party title and escrow account. So really, there wouldn't be, unless you exercise some sort of contingency, there's not something where you can just say, I'm putting it on pause, right? That's a seller who's trying to sell their home. If a buyer comes on and agrees to an asking price up front, they're looking to close on that property in that 30-day window. So really, if it came to a cancellation, there's not necessarily a fee to Roofstock, but you would lose the marketplace fee if the transaction fell through to no fault, or if it fell through just because an investor changed their mind. But again, if someone exercises a contingency, that marketplace fee would be returned to you because you would not be in breach of contract. Hopefully that answers that question. The next question was, is there a way to see how long a home has been on Roofstock? I feel like that would affect the price point. Richard, maybe this is a good one for you, but generally with an occupied property, right? If the tenant's paying rent each month and the seller, while they are looking to sell, they're not necessarily being held up to a fire where they're sitting on a vacant home, right? Like they might not feel as much pressure as far as a home just being on the site for a bit longer. Would you agree?
Yeah, I mean, I think everybody has their, has the timelines that they're working within, depending on what their goals are for the sale, whether they're looking to cash out, they're, in an exchange and looking and have a more of a timeline that they're working by. But ultimately, yeah, I think you're right. There's a little bit less potential urgency there, given that the home is still cash flowing and the tenant is in place. So it's a little the mentality of a seller through an occupied investment sale is definitely going to be different. Than a homeowner who has their home on the market and is looking to uproot themselves and move upon the sale of the property. So I think you're absolutely right. So right now we ultimately do not show days on market for these listings.
Got it. Okay.
The next
And a
question.
quick,
Oh yeah, go ahead.
yeah, go for it. No, go for it.
Cool. So moving to the next question, the question was, I see the repairs are listed as part of the initial investment. Is that just information for the buyer to set apart that money, or does a buyer make a transaction for that amount and it's distributed as needed by Roofstock? So the logic here is that we consider it part of that initial investment because based on the types of repairs that they are brought up on the inspection report, have been deemed more of an immediate repair as opposed to maybe a longer term repair. So, if we inspect a property and we find that the furnace is 25 years old, and given the serial number and the model of that furnace, the life expectancy of that unit was 20 years old. So that unit, while maybe functioning, is past its life expectancy. We're going to note that as more of an immediate repair versus a long-term repair because it's something that a seller or a buyer should probably look to budget for in the short term versus the long term. And so that's, while it's not a mandatory immediate repair, right? If you purchase a home for 100,000 and it shows there's $3,000 in immediate repairs, as a buyer, it's your prerogative as to what which ones, what you want to address and when you want to address them, right? It's not mandatory. It's not a separate transaction between you and the seller or you and Roofstock. It's basically just outlining, hey, these are the results of the inspection. This is probably something you want to budget for maybe in the shorter term. But at the end of the day, it is your prerogative. But we want to make sure it's included there alongside your down payment amount and the closing costs with title. So you have a really good idea of what the initial investment is and how much money you're going to be coming out of pocket in the immediate future.
Got it. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. The next question I see is, how do you filter for certified by Roofstock properties? So really everything you see on the retail marketplace here, and right now you'll see we have 319 listings. Everything will be certified, meaning it did pass through that certification. Now, of course, every property will be in a different condition. Some properties are going to need more work than others. We do have a Roofstock turnkey program, which would essentially mean that after the inspection results came back, there were less than $500 worth of repairs. So maybe for an investor who's coming to the site for the first time, they don't want to deal with a lot of work up front, maybe that would be a good section for them to look into. While every property on the retail marketplace is certified, of course, they're all going to be in different condition. So that's maybe an area that we want to find properties that don't need a lot of work. Um, to piggyback on that point, one thing we did not discuss is the Roofstock Guarantee. So if a property is certified by Roofstock and it makes it onto the site, it will come back with the 30-day money-back guarantee, which basically means that if you're unhappy with the property in the first 30 days of owning it, you can let us know that you'd like to exercise your guarantee. We would list the property back onto the site for free, and if another investor didn't take it off your hands at the same price that you bought it for, then Roofstock would actually just cut you a check for that amount and buy the property back from you. So if a property is certified, it will come with that 30-day money-back guarantee.
Awesome. Good job. Yeah, good bringing that up. The next question was, if there's a bad experience with a property manager listed on Roofstock, will Roofstock evaluate promoting them in the future? The short answer is absolutely, right? I mean, there are, as Nick mentioned, those relationships are ones that we hold very dearly. We recognize that a lot of effort goes into vetting these listings out through the certification process, making sure the underwriting is tight and accurate as it possibly can be. But we recognize that if a home doesn't perform the way that it was marketed in the long term, and that's due to the lack of a quality property management relationship or a property management experience, that's a direct reflection on not just that management company, but Roofstock and its our ability to provide quality investments, right? So this is something that is constantly being audited, that we continue to keep tabs on these property managers that we work with and build those relationships. As when and if poor experiences do occur, it's something that does merit a full investigation to understand the ins and outs of what's happening there. And there have been experiences where we've had to cut ties with property managers and build relationships with others. It's something that's an ongoing effort for us as we look to expand geographically, not just into new markets, but as markets expand within themselves, and more supply hits the site and more buyers come. We want to make sure that we have a variety of different options for you guys.
Yeah, and just to piggyback on that, Richard, the investors on our site, although we do highly recommend that they choose one of the companies that we do partner with, it's really their own choice, right? The investor is able to do their own research. If you found a different company that maybe you like them more or you like their fees more or something like that, you can absolutely go with them. You're not at all required to go with one of the companies that we've posted on the site.
Yep, good point.
Where do I see more photos? So first off, you would just click on the property. Sometimes, it is an issue as far as like marketing photos that we get. And that's just because, for the most part, these are occupied homes. So sometimes you won't find interior photos. But really, that just means that since it is occupied, the seller hasn't been able to get in there and take marketing photos of the home. Worker and staff, you would pull the inspection and look through the inspection result. There will be several photos of the exterior in the inspection document.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's a good point, right? I mean, they're not necessarily the photos in the inspection. There's going to be, typically a lot more photos within the inspection than you'll find in this photo wheel, right? I mean, they're not your pretty high resolution marketing photos because it's an inspector taking them. But at the end of the day, it will give you a great indication of, the condition of the home, that some of the how the tenants living in the property, right? You'll have, kind of a good idea of the the level of cleanliness and some of the marketing side of things. So that's a good place to go as well. Though there's typically, I think, a couple dozens or up to 100 photos within that inspection report.
Mm-hmm.
Next question: where are the property managers and can I self-manage? I think we kind of touched on that. I mean, geographically, these are local folks that are market experts. They're within that market. We've made sure that they have the coverage to these properties before publishing. So, at the end of the day, where are they on the site? I think Nick pointed out in the analysis section that you can go and take a look. But these are local folks that are well tuned into the market, and you're able to have those conversations with them. And of course, can you self-manage? Yeah, you absolutely can. If you go to the management section within our system, within our site, you'll see what are some of the positives and negatives about self-managing. I think it comes down to risk reward. So at the end of the day, it's your call on as to how you want to handle the management of these homes. But like Nick mentioned, no one's ever required to use one of the managers that we've listed on our site or a manager at all if you choose to self-manage.
And another thing you could do there is if you wanted to try to cut out a cost, generally property managers charge about 8% monthly. You could always try self-managing to start, and if it ends up being too much work, you can always just hire a property manager. Although again, most people just go ahead and use one of the ones that we recommend. Um, Sticking to this property management theme, what's the role of the property manager in getting tenants if a current lease is not renewed? So that is 100% their job. Generally, a property manager will have what's called a leasing fee. Just keep in mind that they're not collecting any fees from you when the property is vacant. So it's really a partnership in that regard because the property manager is not making any money if the property is sitting there vacant. So they do want to get someone in there as soon as possible. And since it is generally a percentage of rent that they collect as their fee, they're also going to want to increase rent if at all possible, because that way you're both making more money. So they're gonna try to get someone in there. They're gonna screen them. You can have some say, obviously, since it is your property and who moves in. Credit score requirements, anything along those lines.
Yeah, I want to just kind of elaborate a little bit more on kind of the role that they play, right? If you purchase a home with a tenant in place, or at any point in time during your ownership of the home goes vacant, and even while there is a tenant in place, property managers typically have an annual or biannual inspection that they conduct to understand any repairs that might be needed, and this will coincide with any work orders that a tenant maybe puts in for repair requests. So once your home goes vacant, that property manager, as part of their responsibility as well, will get out into the property, send an inspector through, and get an idea of what kind of rent-ready repairs might be needed. It may be as easy as a coat of paint, cleaning a carpet, finishing a hardwood floor, just to get that home, a little bit nicer and a little bit cleaner, so that when they put it out for lease, you are able to maximize that rent potential. So that's a responsibility that they'll have as well, and as part of their role. It's not something that you have to do outside of the property management group. And that's something that I think is really important to have a conversation with them about as you explore your management options, is talking to them about, the depth of their, what they're looking for when they go through a rent ready turn, just having conversations with that, and get super granular when you go to have those conversations about who you'd like to hire.
Awesome. Yeah, totally. All right, so we've got a Section 8 question here. If I purchase a property with a Section 8 tenant, is the inspection report done by an approved Section 8 inspector? So yes, absolutely. Usually what I recommend to an investor, what they do here is they reach out to the property manager, because they're the ones who are going to be helping to facilitate those inspections. I believe that with a tenant who is receiving Section 8 benefits, there do need to be additional inspections. I believe it's every 2 years an additional inspection needs to take place. So we do get a lot of investors who come to Roofstock, and they're actually specifically looking for Section 8 because they know that it's a guaranteed portion of the rent that is being paid by the government. So that is an added upside there. Potentially downfalls would be you would obviously have to pay for those inspections to take place, but that does incentivize the tenant to keep it in good working order, because they do need to keep the property up to a certain standard in order to stay on those Section 8 vouchers. So Richard, we've got a question here about our Roofstock One product. So Richard and I do not work on the Roofstock One team, but essentially it's a new program where you are buying a share in a property. Right now it is for accredited investors only, and it is actually on hold right now, just with inventory. We're trying to ramp back up for those. What you can do is, and if everyone can still see my screen, if you just click where it says property shares, it will pull up our Roofstock One page. You can absolutely learn, of course, more about how it works here. You can schedule a call with that team. And then once we do go back live with this product, we will be sending out an email blast letting everyone know.
Cool. I guess moving on. How does the rental guarantee from Roofstock work?
So we've got Gary. Yeah, go ahead, Richard.
Yeah. So actually, Nick, I think if you could touch on the details of that rent guarantee.
Yeah, so this is a great question, something we didn't touch on. So this is looped into the Roofstock Guarantee. Basically what it means is we do have properties that are currently vacant on the site. So really the idea of launching this program was that we do want to make sure investors are able to start cash flowing once they close on the property. The way that the rent guarantee works is if you do buy a vacant property on Roofstock and it's vacant at closing, the property management company that we work with in that area would have a 45-day window to find a tenant for you and get a new lease signed. Let's just say that they're unable to. Then Roofstock, starting on the 46th day, would send you a rent check for 75% of whatever the market rent is each month for up to a full year until they do find a tenant. That program has been around for close to 2.5 years now, and so far we've only had to pay out a few people because the property manager is generally able to get someone in there in those first 45 days, and that's really us standing behind the property managers that we partner with. But there is that security blanket just in case something does happen and they're unable to find a tenant.
And just as we go through this, because we are getting a lot more and we only have about 9 minutes left, so I'll go through and start replying to some of these questions in text so you guys have answers to them, but we can continue to answer from the top down, Nick.
Yeah, so we'll try to run through as many as we can here. So what is the little upwards arrow next to the current rent? Great question. So that little upward arrow, and I'll try to find one here on the site that has the upward arrow. What that means is that there is an upside in potential rents. So what that tells you is, so here's one, right? So if you click into this property, you'll notice the tenant right now is paying $1,015. Their lease ends at the end of November. Let's just say that they move out at the end of their lease. If you click estimated market, you'll notice that it's going to jump. That's actually a pretty significant jump, right? So what that means is that after we spoke with the property managers on the ground that we work with, they actually think they could rent this home for closer to $1,150. So that's going to tell you that there is some potential to increase the cash flow on the property if there's a little green arrow next to the rent. All right. So what are the best practices for forming an LLC? Like living in California, but properties are in different states. Do we need to have an LLC in California or LLC in each state for each property? So sometimes there are financial questions that we definitely defer to more of a financial planner, maybe a tax professional, because doesn't matter to us how you invest in the property. Typically, though, if you are investing with an LLC, it will be a cash offer. The reason I say that is because most lenders are not going to loan directly into an LLC. What they're going to do is loan into an individual's name or maybe a spousal couple or business partners. And then what you could do is potentially transfer it into an LLC after you close. So for this question, I would defer to either a tax professional or the lender themselves to see how that would work. But again, it's really up to the investor how you finance the property and take title. How does Roofstock make a profit? I want to understand any charges, fees associated. So we've touched on this, but just again, the only time the investor ever has to pay Roofstock is the marketplace fee on a property under 100K. It's going to be a flat fee of $500, and then we charge the sellers a 3%. So 3.5% is how Roofstock is making our money. I see the next question. Can I purchase using an LLC? Like we just went over, yes, completely up to you as the investor. If you are using an LLC, just want to make sure to shore that up with your lender up front. If it's a cash offer, go for it. It's definitely a lot easier to invest with an LLC if you are buying cash. I'm seeing a question about Roofstock Reserve here. So what are the benefits over properties which are not in reserve? Great question. So Roofstock Reserve is a new program that we're all pretty excited about. Basically what it is homes that are also owned by Roofstock, so they're not third-party sellers. You're getting a few added benefits here. Not only is it owned by Roofstock, but we've also done some additional steps in order to make sure the investor is very comfortable. We do offer a 1-year home warranty on these properties. We make sure to pick areas that we feel very good about, both short-term and long-term growth. We do make sure to pick properties with at least a 3-star neighborhood. They have not been inspected up front. So what that means is you would receive an inspection contingency during the closing process, which Roofstock would actually pay for. And we do verify the most up-to-date tenant ledger to make sure that the tenants are current on rent. So while every property on Roofstock is certified, it's really taking an additional step knowing that you're buying a house that's been thoroughly vetted by Roofstock and is owned by Roofstock, which is pretty great. Are lending fees included in the initial investment number at the top of the page? Yes. So if you click on a property, I'll just click on this one. If you hover your mouse over this initial investment number, you'll notice it's going to include your down payment, closing costs, repair costs, and loan fees. So that's Again, if you wanted to finance the property, just move this down payment bar. Let's say you put 25% down. Your initial investment, of course, will drop dramatically since you are putting debt on the property. You've got your down payment, closing costs, repair costs, and loan fees. And Richard, thanks for texting the response to some of these questions. I think that just goes to the individual, so I'll still try to run through them here.
I sent it to sent to all, so it should show up for everyone.
Oh, great. Oh, okay, awesome.
But I can jump in here as well. So what credit score is needed to use your lenders? Most lenders will vary, and depending on the credit score limits will impact the points to close and the I guess the cost of that program. So down payment amounts, loan to values may change, interest rates may change, credit scores may change. So Nick, I mean, do you have a number that most of these lenders typically look for, or is it pretty variable depending on the product, the program, and the home?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really gonna, like you said, just depend on the lender. Sometimes if you have an iffy credit score, definitely worth getting a pre-approval letter beforehand and just knowing what you're approved up to. If you have excellent credit, you're probably fine. Some other things that they do look for are W-2 income, any sort of bankruptcies in the last few years, things like that. So really the normal things that any sort of institutional financing group or lender is going to look for. But we do make it really easy to get pre-approved. We have several lenders that we work with, that you can get pre-approved with the same day. I don't have a number in mind, but 650 comes up a lot in conversations I have with lenders as kind of the minimum. So it's definitely worth checking with the lender.
Moving down, I answered the one about what kind of properties does Roofstock provide. Next question being, does an investor need to hire a third-party inspector, or Roofstock provides one? So, similar to moving into a new market and hiring and getting in touch with third-party property management vendors, we do the same thing with inspection companies. So these are inspection companies that are national, that are able to gain exposure and get out to all of the markets that we operate in. So we have these relationships in place. So we're able to those are the folks that we'll utilize to put those initial inspections together. Part of the value in this deep network of inspection companies that we have is that we're able to really mold what we want these inspectors to be looking for, the types of inspections that they're putting together, but also for the uniformity, right? When you go to these individual listings, you'll see that a lot of these inspections, if not all of them, are formatted the same. So it makes it really easy to go to the same places and find the same information. And so you're not inundated with looking at 50 different homes with 50 different formatted inspection reports and data in all different sorts of areas. And so to the question, we would be able to provide that inspector, whether the inspection is done upfront in the certification process, or in the event that there is an inspection contingency built into the transaction, we would be able to get that inspector out there, on behalf of the buyer for the transaction.
Great. So next question I see here, I like this one. How do you choose which markets to go into? Is it based on cap rate, 1% rule, et cetera? So it's really all of the above. What you'll notice is that we are primarily in the Southeast and the Midwest, really where there are still affordable homes. For example, you're not going to find us in San Francisco or Los Angeles or New York or Denver. It is harder to find cap rates there that are going to make sense, at least for most of our investors. Now, having said that, we are always expanding. So we're not against entering any market. We do need to make sure that both supply and demand will be there. We do need to make sure that there's going to be property management teams set up in that market. So we are always expanding. I always take phone calls with an open mind if someone's looking for a specific market and we're not necessarily there yet. I'll always pass along that feedback to our supply team, and I'm sure you can attest to that, Richard.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's supply comes from a lot of different funnels, right? You have, again, like I mentioned earlier in the call, you have individual owners, you have property managers, you have brokers, you have local turnkey operators or experts, you have some of the institutions that we work with. And so, a market expansion can really be built around the types of supply funnels that we have. So as we start to scale, as we continue to scale, our footprint and our marketplace, and we build new relationships, that's going to allow us to move into some other markets, right? As we continue to grow those supply options. And so as we continue to gain, exposure and build relationships with sellers, then that can promote us to, or prompt us to get in touch with the property managers, the inspectors, make sure that we have lenders that are going to lend in these markets, make sure that we have insurance providers that are going to be able to provide quality programs for everyone. So it's we continue to take the feedback that we receive from the buyers within our site. Our deep-rooted ties in the institutional space allows us to really have a good grasp on where the markets are headed, what markets are hot, what the institutional world is doing out there, and so that can impact our abilities to expand into some of these other markets as well. That's a lot of how we started the organization was working with some of these institutions to sell some of their footprint in the Southeast, Florida, Georgia, North Carolina as we started. So again, as we continue to scale our relationships, it allows us to move into new markets. And of course, all of those markets are going to have various different expectations and types of supply. But we want to make sure that we're able to continue pushing supply in these markets as we expand into them.
Perfect. So I realize it's 1 o'clock. I don't have another call right now, Richard. If you wanted to go, we can maybe try to knock out a few more questions since we started, at about 12:05. We can try to get through as many as we can.
Yeah,
For anyone
absolutely.
who does have to run, I'm sure our marketing team will be sending out, the recorded call here, as well as Richard and my contact info. If anyone wanted to take it down right now, my email is really easy, and so is Richard's. Mine is literally just Nick, so Nick @roofstock.com. I'm on the phone all day with investors. I'm emailing with people all day. So definitely reach out to me if you wanted to either set up another phone call or just shoot me a whole list of questions. Happy to answer every single one. And Richard, I think yours is just richard@roofstock.com, right?
Yeah, and I'm going to throw it I'm actually throwing it in the chat section right now. I'll include my email if anyone wants to get in touch directly. I'll also include a link to my Calendly if anybody wants to book some time. I'd be happy to carve out 15 to 30 minutes here, sometime later today, next week, or whenever anyone's available to have a discussion. I'd be more than happy to give people more insight into kind of what the world of supply is, how we look at listing homes, what that process entails, and just connect with anybody to help build the community. So I'll throw that in the chat section now as well.
Awesome. Yep. And on my email as well, I'll include a custom link to my calendar as well. Good point. So I like this next question just because I actually got off the phone with this investor right before this call. He had asked, in your experience, can the management fees be negotiated? It doesn't hurt to ask, right? We do try to pre-negotiate these fees down beforehand with the property management companies that we work with. Generally, if you're buying maybe 1 or 2 properties in a market, usually the answer would be no. They're just going to stick to their management fee. But you never know. You could always ask. Where you are able to luck out and potentially bring that fee down is if you do buy multiple homes in one market. Sometimes different companies will have some sort of an institutional level fee structure, right? If you're able to own multiple properties in one market. But again, you can always reach out to them and ask if they are able to do that for you.
Good question. Next question, how does an international investor who can't come to the US conclude a purchase? So what we would ultimately do is, we are able to, if you are domestic, we're able to send a mobile notary out to you wherever you're located. So if you're at work, you're at home, obviously buying out of state, you're not able to get to that area, and you're in a different place than the seller. On an institutional level or on an international level, excuse me, what we'd have to do is get you to the nearest embassy, where we're able to have a notary there for any closing documents. We absolutely work with international buyers as well as international sellers. It's something that we have the capacity to do. Just keep in mind that as an international user or international person, you would have to ultimately get to the nearest embassy in order to wet sign those closing documents. Anything prior to that, disclosures, PSA, amendments, extensions, all can be done through DocuSign. But when it comes to closing documents, we would need a wet signature, and that would need to be done at the nearest embassy.
Yep, exactly. And we do work with international investors. It all comes down to just making sure that your financing is squared away up front. Typically, it'll be a lot easier if it's just a cash offer. Great. So 105 here, Richard. What do you think? Maybe we go till 110.
That works.
I don't want to run. Okay. So this next person had asked a question earlier about what happens if a scenario falls through and buyer and seller are not able to come to terms, and then he just asked, I'm asking more from a seller's perspective. Richard, do you want to speak to that? Let's say if a deal falls through, there is that earnest money deposit that could potentially go to the seller if something doesn't work out.
Yeah. So, I mean, again, it all, I think it always comes down to the particular scenario. Sometimes sellers are a little bit more urgent to get the home sold. And so they're a little bit less flexible to extend an escrow, to be as flexible with an earnest money deposit. And so their ultimate goal would be to cancel that transaction and get the home up onto the site as quickly as possible. Some sellers are willing to extend it given the right circumstances, depending on, the circumstances around why the transaction would be canceling or need to be extended in the first place. From an earnest money deposit standpoint, that's going to be subjective, deal by deal. If historically speaking, if a seller or someone has tied the home up in contract and then that transaction cancels outside of a contingency, to pay for the time that they've invested, they're likely going to keep the earnest money deposit. But again, it's subjective. You're certainly able to request, a refund back on the earnest money deposit. It comes down to the seller and their perspective, their opinion, their particular scenario. So there is not kind of one uniform path forward when it comes to redistributing an earnest money deposit or extending an escrow. It's all really contextual for that particular transaction, which I hope
Mhm.
answered that question.
Yeah, I definitely think so. That next question is pretty much almost the same one. Once the PSA is signed, can seller withdraw from it? All comes down to contingencies, why the deal is canceling, and so on.
Yeah.
All right,
Next
so I'm seeing,
question.
yeah. Do you want to take this one, Richard, or do you want me to go through this one?
Sure. Yeah. So, how accurate are your expenses and cap rates? For example, are you bringing in accurate property taxes on the price paid for the property? This is a great question. And I think at the end of the day, this is something that Gregor Watson, is really emphasizes. He's one of the co-founders here. Is that the underwriting can make or break the investment, right? If you buy a home, expecting and seeing that it's underwritten at a 7% cap rate and that ends up performing at a 5% cap rate, you didn't get what you paid for, right? And so we work tirelessly day and night to make sure that our underwriting is continuously being updated and as accurate as it possibly can. And so, as I mentioned earlier, right, the perspective that we take to underwriting comes from the institutional space. So, a lot of the same line items, the vacancies, repair and maintenance budgets, insurance, taxes, property management are all coming from our team's experience buying and selling billions of dollars of assets in the institutional world, as well as the transactional data that we get from having sold thousands of homes through our platform, right? So from a taxes standpoint, we what I think is unique to Roofstock and is something that's it's almost a moving target is that we underwrite taxes based off of the new assessed value of the home. So we're not going to base a tax underwriting our tax line item off of a previous assessed value. We're assuming that with the sale of the property and a new assessed value given the sale price of the home and that tax millage rate in the market, that those taxes will be going up. And you'll find that when you go into a property, you're going to see two different options for taxes. And it's the only line item that we show options for because we'll show you what the previous year's taxes were, as well as an estimated future tax or an estimated current tax based off of the sale of that property. And so, the understanding here is that, especially in some of these markets in the Midwest, the Northeast, the Southeast, the previous tax assessed value might be dramatically lower than the sale price of the home. And so, with the sale of the property and that tax assessed value going up, we're using that number based on the sale price and a millage rate and the tax millage rate to assume what the future taxes are going to be. And so, if you wanted to toggle between the two to understand how the underwriting is changing, you certainly can. But that's something that we take very seriously and make sure that we're as accurate as we possibly can be with projecting for future taxes.
Awesome. Great. Yeah, so I think we're approaching the end here. Thanks for everyone for sticking around. If you did stick around till 10 minutes after the scheduled end time here, really appreciate that. Um, Richard, thanks for being on here with us. And I think it's really good that we were able to get together both on a seller's perspective and from the buyer's perspective. I think that was really helpful. Um,
Okay.
and really, guys, at the end of the day, this is all about making investing in real estate very easy, right? It's a very proven out model and way of building wealth, and that's really what Roofstock is doing is, helping investors and sellers reach whatever their goals are.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for helping out here, Nick, and thanks everybody for joining. Appreciate y'all taking the time, and we'll see what we can do about getting the rest of these questions answered. I know we've taken up about an hour or so already, so we'll go through and answer some of these questions. But again, I've added my email and link to my calendar in the chat section of the webinar here. And so, feel free to ping me directly if there's anything that I can help out with. Our team's a really great source of knowledge here. And so feel free to leverage us, day and night for anything you guys are interested in learning.
Awesome. Well, yeah, thanks again for everyone who joined, and definitely looking to getting to know some of you on a one-on-one basis, and yeah, definitely looking forward to speaking with some of you. All right.
Awesome.
Bye, Richard. Bye, everyone.
Bye, guys.